All right. Oh, this is a comfy couch,
cozy.
huh?
It's cozy.
I don't know if we're getting out of this.
All right, well, Nicole, so good to be here with you. If you haven't seen her TED Talk, couldn't recommend it more. It's rare you meet people who can talk about very complex systems problems, deeply entangled through multiple industries and geographies, and distill it down into its essence, and then provide a very practical solution that can really replicate. So on that note, why don't I kick it over to Nicole, let her introduce herself, kind of the origin story, and what she's up to now, and then we can go from there.
Okay, all right. Well, hi, everybody. I'm Nicole Rycroft. I'm the founder and executive director at Canopy. I'm both a professional tree hugger, and as you can tell from my medium is the message t-shirt this afternoon, also a certified trash talker. And so Canopy we're a solutions-driven, not-for-profit organization. We work to protect the world's forests, species, climate, and help advance frontline community rights. And we do that by harnessing the purchasing power of the marketplace and transforming these supply chains that currently drive deforestation and forest degradation. And what that means is that basically at the core of our model of change is that the business adage that the customer's always right. The more money they spend, the more right they tend to be in terms of their suppliers. And so what we do is we work with 1,000 of the world's largest corporate customers of paper-based packaging, wood-based textiles like rayon, viscose, modal, things that are suit linings in your little black dress, in your lingerie, all sorts of kind of clothing items. And what we do is we work with those brands to basically set really ambitious purchasing policies that commit to shifting away from sourcing from high carbon, high biodiversity value forests, and to actually ultimately try and set the market incentives that are needed for a transformation away from these kind of linear extractive supply chains that are really relics of the last century to actually a more fundamentally sustainable, more circular production model. And so that's at the core of our work. Obviously, the reason that we get out of bed every day is to protect forest ecosystems and to really protect forests at the scale that the scientific community are calling for. And scientists say that we need to protect 30 to 50% of the world's forests for planetary stability. Then we need to actually be transforming these supply chains that currently drive their degradation. And to do so, and this is a bit of a spoiler alert, we can draw on things that are currently seen as waste. So integrating these alternative feedstocks or inputs into the production system, which requires us to obviously mobilize capital. So at the core of our work is the fact that forests are foundational for life on Earth. And even though I am a professional tree hugger, I know I'm not the only tree hugger in the room. They clean our water, they clean our air, they stabilize our climate. They're home to millions of the world's indigenous peoples, as well as many that we share this planet with that are not two-legged in their form. And every year we still mow down an astonishing amount of forests. 5.1 billion, and that's billion with a B, trees are cut every year to make pizza boxes, the Amazon boxes that land on all of our doorsteps, the clothing that we're buying. And, I think in 2025, we are smarter than mowing down these complex, beautiful ecosystems to make daily commodities that are built on kind of cellulose as the fundamental building block. And you can find cellulose in any plant matter. And so whilst we're mowing down forest ecosystems, parallel with that, we are literally dealing with incredible pollution and waste management issues. There's 100 billion items of clothing that are produced every year, and 60% of that is in landfill within 12 months, degrading into methane.
Astonishing.
Yeah.
So we obviously all feel very strongly about the problem. I'd love to hear a little bit about the sequencing as you've been building the solution.
Sure.
Particularly now, again, the last 6 months, a lot of things in the world feel like they've changed in terms of sentiment, politics, even how corporates are behaving now.
Sure.
So I guess let's pretend the audience, I as a corporate board,
Right.
and you show up as they're your key stakeholder. talk about what you've learned about what really matters most to them and how you make just a pure business case for this.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that's really shifted since COVID, right? Like before COVID, sustainability was often still a kind of a nice to have, or, you know, we had really progressive designers like Stella McCartney who kind of like are just deeply philosophically built in, and so they're willing to jump in and set the pace. But what we found through the first couple of years of COVID was that we had more big companies signing on with us than had signed on in the previous 6 years. And it was because there was a recognition of there's only so many market disruptions of that scale that brands can actually tolerate, that we are living with supply chains that are increasingly volatile because of climate disruptions, fires. 2 years ago, there was more than 20 million hectares of fires that burnt just in Canada. That doesn't count the forest fires that were in Chile and across Europe and Australia and Southeast Asia. It's literally a fiber basket going up in smoke. And so resilience is really a big concern for a lot of brands and C-suite and boards of brands. And so the transition to next gen or circular production is a business imperative. Like it is a core business strategy priority in the 1,000+ brands that we work with.
And so how does, when they tell the story, for example, this next gen mill in Sweden, or whatever, you know, that these types of applications on the ground, when they're starting to come to fruition, what does Canopy enable the corporates to be able to tell their stakeholders, both the environmental but also the business case story?
Yeah, so Canopy, we're a little bit quirky. We're an ecosystem enabler. So we work to build the market demand, like the market incentive, the market pull through, which is critical to incentivize the conventional producers to change business as usual, to actually stop being completely reliant on forest fiber and start using waste textiles or agricultural residues or industrial food waste as an input instead, because that requires them to make an infrastructure investment. It's essential for these new game-changing technologies, these kind of ventures that are coming through that are TRL 7, 8, 9 and ready to scale. Their investors need some sense of market security to feel confident stepping in. And so that's kind of the space that we're working in. We're working with the pipeline, we work with the conventional producers, we're working with the brands, and increasingly we've been starting to work over the last 12 months with mobilizing the scale of investment that's required, because this is a CapEx intensive industry, just like the energy ecosystem is. Like a pulp mill costs $200 to $350 million. So it's a lot of capital. We estimate that it's actually about $80 billion that needs to be mobilized over the course of the next 8 years into this infrastructure transition.
Wow. And so what is the time to profitability for this first plant? How do you think about that?
So it's interesting, both there's like the ventures, the new technologies, and what we call next gen innovators that are going to build their own bricks and mortar, right? So for them to be up at kind of scale and profitable, we're anticipating that they'll follow a fairly kind of normal trajectory where kind of like the first 6 to 9 months, they'll still be kind of commissioning and coming up to scale after they flip on the switch, integrating into these kind of long value chains, and then really hitting sort of like their stride in sort of like that latter half of the first year and moving into the second and third year. What we have learned is that the market pull through and offtake is really important. For these first to market operators, there is, like a modest premium kind of tolerance, but ultimately it's about scale, right? For conventional producers, we've had 4 big conventional Chinese viscose producers or rayon producers. They've all launched their own in-house next-gen tech within the last 2 months. So they're companies that have big industrial players that have conventionally relied 100% on wood as the input.
Yeah.
And they're now starting to use recycled bamboo furniture or recycled textiles. They see, as has often been the case with China with renewables, they see that this is the future of their sector. So they're not building their capacity for today. they're building their production capacity for where they see the market 5 years from now and 10 years from now. And they already have a sense that from a market perspective, this is a profitable route for them.
Wonderful. And what is, I mean, in terms of change of behavior or change, when you're retrofitting one of these existing plants or building them new, what is the, change of behavior and cost of kind of the upfront cost versus the ultimate kind of return on investment? Like, how do you, make that case for us?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is different for whether it's a startup building bricks and mortar or a conventional producer. With a conventional producer, it depends on the hardware that they have, and it may be a $20 to $15 million retrofit or a bolt-on. For a new innovator building to scale, then really what we see is that, for them, it's a substantially larger ticket. There is one of our innovation partners just within the last month announced their first commercial scale facility. It's going to be built in France. It's in partnership with the French government. It's also with Temasek, with Breakthrough Energies, with a number of really progressive impact and sovereign wealth funds, impact investors and sovereign wealth funds engaged, with strong market pull-through. And so I think it's not just the investment package now, it's actually how do you do that wraparound ecosystem support?
It's really supply, demand, the capital stack,
Yeah.
and all the key stakeholders that make it come alive.
Yeah.
And the fact that you've now assembled that and that's now going kind of online here in the next year or so in Sweden, right?
In Sweden, it will be back online and they're commissioning now. It'll be back online in early 26. And for Cirque, which is the entity I just spoke to that's going to be building in France, they'll be online in 27. And there's already big conventional producers that have very small volume, but are kind of dipping their toe into the pond as well.
Amazing. So as we kind of watch you evolve here,
Sure.
and try to take some of the key learnings that can be applied elsewhere, but I think also just for you more specifically, what are some of those key next steps for you in the business? I know you're working in China right now, in India. You're kind of convening these coalitions of key stakeholders now that you know how to speak their language, you know who you need to be involved. Talk a little about...
Are we at time? Is that...
No, that's someone's phone's ringing. Maybe paint the picture a little bit for kind of what these next couple of years look like. What are some of the key milestones?
Sure.
And how could this group kind of give us the situational awareness to know who we could be maybe meeting or talking to that could be helpful?
Yeah. Okay. That feels like 6 questions.
I know, that's a long
6
one.
really great
well,
questions.
We've got 5 minutes, so you're
okay.
up for TED Talk on what's next.
All right.
Sorry.
So where are we going? I think, so normally what we're told is that supply chains change over decades, right? It's slow, you have to be patient. What we've found at Canopy is that supply chains can change in real time. We've seen that with our work in the viscose supply chain. When we started that work, just on 10 years ago, no one even had a line of sight as to where viscose was coming from. We now have 71% of global viscose producers now verified as not sourcing from high carbon, high biodiversity value forests, and 12 kind of next gen product lines online, right? That's within a period, and that, to be honest, that change has happened within the last 6 years.
Incredible.
Yeah. So this is a supply chain that's transforming in real time, and we're going to do the same in packaging and in paper. I think there isn't enough capital in this space, right? A lot of impact investment is going into really good places, renewables, EVs, right? Like a little bit starting into food and ag. There's materials are 33% of kind of climate footprint. Less than 3% of impact investment is going into the materials space. And so if you're investing in this space, and if you are an impact investor and you're not in materials, then I would say that there's a big growth opportunity for you to be paying attention to. We're happy to help sort of provide advice around kind of where we see opportunities there.
And this is across the asset class stack. This is not just venture, right?
No,
That's one of the
no,
beauties here. This is pertinent.
And really what we're needing now is not kind of, I mean, of course, there's always a need for venture and earlier stage capital, but what we really need is growth and private equity level tickets. And then, this isn't just about an individual pulp mill here or a pulp mill there. This is about building a new industrial ecosystem which means that they happen regionally, which is why Canopy's work is kind of clustered with this work in China, the work that we have in North America, work in India, because just like car manufacturing is all clustered around the Great Lakes, because you have all these secondary businesses that get built around it to support that industrial kind of system, that production system. And so the same will happen here. And so I think just looking, you need different kinds of capital for North America and for Europe. And so we're working to launch a kind of a growth private equity fund with an impact investor that's UK based that will focus on the first 8 to 12 next gen mills in Europe and US and Canada. But in the global south, the cost of capital is much higher. And so that's where I know there's been a lot of talk about blended finance here, but that's a big focus of our work for India and for China, is building out sort of like the kind of blended finance platforms that are needed, because you have to build that whole ecosystem. And it's a bunch of mini kind of substacks of capital, because you need a different form of catalytic and philanthropic and technical assistance kind of capital to work with farmers and the informal economy around waste aggregation and stubble, kind of straw, kind of pre-processing, than what you need for writing a big debt check to a mill that is ready to actually build on or expand their existing facilities.
Amazing. So maybe we just close with, what can this group do? What can we be aware of out there? Is there kind of one little or two sticky problems that kind of we should be aware of that we can be helpful on?
The biggest problem at this point is that there just isn't enough investment going into this area.
Okay.
And so if you are investing, then take a look at Next Gen Materials, and Canopy's happy to be a resource and an advisor.
And what type of capital in particular is most valuable to you right now?
Growth equity, private equity, or that would be for North America and Europe, or philanthropic capital and first loss capital for a blended finance vehicle that we're building for India alongside of some of the big multilaterals at the moment.
And anything else in terms of the board or the team, in terms of talent that you could wave a wand, who would show up?
Oh my God. People that are really kind of savvy around building blended finance facilities, that would be a bonus.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks, everybody.